I'm Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads, and with me I have Jake Payne, our editor-in-chief, and together this is our What's the Headline podcast. And if we seem punchy, it's because we are. We just witnessed a match of all matches where blows were thrown, haymakers thrown. LOX versus Dipset, long anticipated, much awaited, and I think really, really great. How about you?
Yeah, man, great for verses. Truly, I mean, it's not hyperbole or a hot take. This is my favorite versus of 2021. Shout out to everyone else that's been involved, and I did not expect that to be. I don't think you did either.
Nah, you're gonna put it just to 21. You won't say your favorite verses ever.
I mean, that's tricky. That's a tough one. It's definitely top. I'm gonna say two. I enjoyed RZA and DJ Premier when the format was kind of new and exciting, and those are two of the goats. But I think for an entertainment value purposes, not nostalgia, and certainly there's nostalgia with both of these groups, but for me subjectively, on an entertainment level, this is probably number one. Teddy Riley and Babyface was close, but I think this bumped that.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges, man. Teddy and Babyface Part One was just a whole different animal and beast by itself. First of all, it was in the very beginning. I think it was like number 2 or 3 of the verses, and the technical difficulties were part of the character of it. And then Teddy coming out with the dancing crew and the choreography and stuff like that, and Babyface just throwing shade in his cool studio, like that was all-time classic. But this one, man, first of all, it's a testament to how far Versus has come.
Yeah.
Obviously, we started this in COVID, and any fears of COVID had to be like put by the wayside tonight, just given how packed it was in Madison Square Garden's theater. But beyond that, the production level, man, Triller, full-blown concert, just a whole different world.
Yeah, and let me ask you, just being a New Yorker, I mean, we're both, I'm in Philly right now. So for me, I could get there. It's probably another hour than it might take you. But did COVID factor in for you not, for you watching virtually?
Nah, man, the thing that factored in was the podcast, really. I wanted to be here so we could talk about it real time, that was it. I'm vaccinated. I know the Delta variant it's definitely not 100% against it, but at a certain point, I just want to live life. And so, I'm moving with practicality, but also living life. You know what I mean?
Man, I like that. Yeah, I never thought I'd be there. I saw some of my Philly folks that were going up tonight. And certainly they got a show. So yeah, man.
Yeah, did you get any reports from inside the building?
No, at one point I looked through my Instagram stories and some folks I know were there and kind of, getting there like, yo, I'm here, moments off, but nothing of value to you or I or anyone that didn't see. I'll be very curious. Like this is, maybe apart from Gucci Mane versus Jeezy, which I feel like kind of left with some unfinished business, so to speak. Shout out to Styles who made it very clear this is all about peace. But I gotta say, just as a viewer, man, I have questions. So if tomorrow on Breakfast Club, if these groups together or apart are doing any sort of post versus press, they've got my attention because I want to know everything. I want the tea.
Yeah, man. I thought it was great how midway through, well, first of all, you, to your credit, labeled it as WWE from the start. Clowning my man Michael Buffer, let's get ready to rumble, called him a fake Vince McMahon.
bootleg, yeah.
Bootleg.
His hair was just a certain way.
Yeah, yeah, he did actually. Look, you had me going, man. But the first half before he said that, the energy was on point, man. They were really, really, really going at it and going hard. But Styles made a point, and Jada made a point of saying, listen, we planned this. We told each other we were going to go after each other, and they delivered big time.
Yeah, and I love the fact that, one of the disappointments, and there's very few in this, is there were just so many damn people on the stage, which I feel like two things. One, and you can speak to this more than I can, I feel like that's a replication of a time-tested hip-hop tradition, especially in New York, of like, yo, crews are going to be on stage. I feel like on the flip, though, it may have limited the showmanship from, you know, all these MCs and groups. But that was my one concern is, you know, there were several reminders of like, yo, we like each other. We've done songs together. You know, this morning they announced a tour of Dipset, of the LOX, also State Property, great lineup. But you know, anytime you're dealing with entourages and people in the crowd and there's certain shout outs during the show, like, you know, we both know things can escalate, and shout out especially to Styles for reminding people at a few key points in the show that this really is a entertainment and a performance.
Yeah, at one point, Jada told Styles to hug Jim Jones to like show the crews that it was all love, you
Oh,
know.
I missed that. I mean, I saw the hug, but I didn't see the cue. That's interesting.
Yeah, now Jada literally said, "Yo, Styles, hug Jim so people know this. This is, this is not serious. This is all love." But you know, to your point, man, I've been to countless shows in New York, and it was definitely a throwback to those days in the '90s and early O's. It felt like a New York concert. I got to say, I have a love-hate for that because of exactly what you identified. You know, at times you would get lost and you wouldn't even be able to find the artist because the crew was so deep, or they'd be behind like third row, whatever, on their own show. But you know, if their mission was to bring New York back, I can't think of any better way to do it than not only that, but just the showmanship, the saying from the outset, this is a competition, this is a battle. A lot of these have been celebrations and dudes have been like doing each other's verses and stuff like that. This was not that at all, man. This was a straight throwdown, and I thought it was amazing.
So, I mean, as far as the crowd, I only have but one question. What is that guy that looked like the Dos Equis most interesting man in the world that was on stage in the bedazzled jacket? Like, if Dipset does Breakfast Club or if they do Sway, I gotta get the answer on who that guy is. He's somebody's uncle or next door neighbor or something.
Let's have LOX on again, man. We've had him on before. Let's do it ourselves.
Yeah, I feel like he was with the Dipset, but I like that plan too. Yeah, I like that a lot. So, I mean, that speaks to it. Going into it, I got to ask, just hip hop head to hip hop head, what expectations did you have as far as where this could go? Did you have a clear cut winner in mind, just as far as preconceived notions?
I did because I think the LOX's catalog, when you factor in solo material, group material, features, all that was just greater. There was so many records that were not played tonight. Like for example, Knockout Punch would have been BMF, right? And Styles is on that with Rick Ross.
Yeah.
They have so many features you don't even realize it. And they started showing off toward the end by playing 3, 4, 5 songs at a time.
Yeah.
But they had records to burn. So
that's interesting.
Dipset has got some similar characteristics in that they have group and solo material and obviously features. But I think those are the LOX, especially given the Bad Boy affiliation and everything they've done over the last couple of decades. I thought it was just going to be much stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and forth over the last few weeks because Dipset, there's a certain nostalgia that the LOX don't necessarily receive. The LOX have been active. I mean, in the last 5 years, they put out 2 albums. They very much remain together. Dipset has this breakup to makeup mentality. There's a certain nostalgia. There's, a fashion element. There's a New York element. There's all this iconography. And I feel like people romanticize Dipset. And I probably going into this am a bigger Dipset fan just in terms of bodies of work. And also the LOX, you're getting 3 people. With Dipset, I mean, that truly was a movement that includes these 4 gentlemen that we saw tonight: Cameron, Jim Jones, Freaky Zeke, and Joel Santana. But I mean, going through those mixtape years and those compilation years, there was Hell Rel, J.R. Ryders, Jaja, Uncasa, there's, Purple City, there's all of these spinoffs. And as we've all seen with Versus, that can work to an advantage. I mean, and I gotta say, tonight, no guests. No, at one point they were even joking. Dipset was joking towards the LOX that they didn't bring Diddy out. And I just thought that at a time when sometimes that can be a rabbit out of a hat to win back the crowd, from technical emceeing, this was pretty dope that it was just the 2 groups and their entities. So I say that to say I went back and forth on the 2. I could see either of them taking it, but I probably would have erred on the side of Dipset coming into it.
On Dipset? Oh wow, okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, for those reasons, for nostalgia. I think from a technical side, you know, the LOX, but I did not expect what happened, and I don't think you did either.
Yeah, so I thought there were going to be guests too, especially with it being in the garden. You know, I thought there was opportunity for tons and tons of people to come out, and it was star-studded. You definitely had people in the audience. You had Carmelo Anthony, Fat Joe, Fab was in the building, Conway. I heard Migos were in the building. You know, it was a really star-studded and heavily
My
attended.
son was like right over their shoulder, you know, the whole
Yeah,
time on stage. It was
yeah, but
dope. Yeah.
nobody jumped on though. You know, but let me ask you this: do you associate, and I'm asked for both groups, the LOX more with the '90s or the O's, and same for Dipset?
Great question. I mean, I feel like Dipset really amplified around the same time the LOX went into kind of a quiet phase. I mean, for those that follow the story, you know, LOX put out 2 albums. Boom, they were on Bad Boy. Boom, they were off Bad Boy. Put out, you know, We Are the Streets. And then due to paperwork, due to 3 different solo careers, rebranding with D Block, things changed. And at that exact same time, you know, Dipset amplified. Cameron had come out as a solo star and then regalvanized with this group. And out of that, you know, his hype man, Jimmy Jones, turned into, you know, really his #2 capo status. Joel Santana really hit the ground running. You know, they had Jay-Z and Rockefeller behind them, and then later years, you know, became priorities at Def Jam. So I don't see a huge overlap, but I do think that just in terms of a certain time in New York, both are there. But I think you're right. I think a LOX is like 97 to like 2000, 2001 as a unit. And I think of Dipset as like, you know, '02 to really '06, you know. But of course, you know, I mean, tonight there was obviously solo records. And with of those major careers, none of them have ever really wavered. Cameron's disappeared sometimes for a year here, a year there, but he's always had a huge presence. What about you though?
Yeah, you know, remarkably, both groups have stayed relevant for the better part of 2 decades now, and I think that's a
Yeah.
testament to them as individuals and as groups. But you know, when I think about origins, I definitely think about the LOX in the '90s. You know,
Hmm.
some of the biggest records are those Bad Boy records, with Biggie and Kim and people like that. And so, and that's just distinctly '90s for me. And I think of Dipset as the O's. You know, one of my greatest memories is going to the Jay-Z American Gangster show at Apollo Theater. And this was like 2000, when that dropped, 2007.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
seven.
And, you know, it's in Harlem and they start playing We Fly High.
Mhm.
And, you know, instead of Ballin, that they're yelling Brooklyn, you know, because
Oh,
Brooklyn had taken over the Apollo Theater up in Harlem. But you know that was distinctly like O's for me. So I have vivid memories of both from different eras. But dude, we're 20 years away from the O's at this point. You know, '01, and so you know at a certain point those collapse into being the same era.
it's crazy. I mean, you think about it, and I mean, our audience would really appreciate this kind of factoid. But you know, not Styles, but Chic and Jada debut on Main Source's second album, "Fuck What You Think," which comes out in '94. In '95, Big L's "Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous," Cameron he sneaks in with a feature verse, you know, a short. It might not even be a whole 16, but the genesis of both of these movements, you know, is that, you know, heart and soul, that breadbasket of the hip hop we love. And to watch it, you know, play out over the years that followed is really interesting. To your point, they've always been relevant. And I love watching. I mean, we're going to get to who won, you know, very shortly, but I love the fact that both of these groups are getting their attention. And there were definitely joints on both sides from their catalogs that I did not expect to hear. And to your point, you know, you look at the LOX, like they didn't play the Primo joint Recognize, which is my favorite group song. And, you know, Dipset has so many mixtape songs they could have done, but opted not to. So it was really, really interesting. And yeah, there could have easily been at least 10 more rounds tonight.
Yeah, man. So we talked about this a little bit, but I want to go into it a little bit more deeply. And that's just the execution and the platforms of the show itself. So I watched on Triller and I have Apple TV, so I watched on the flat screen, and it was spectacular. You know, it looked like a full-blown, almost award show, like multiple camera angles, wide shots, shots from up above on the ceiling, like booms, like it was a full-blown professional thing. I had IG on my phone too because I wanted to see the commentary. It's always entertaining seeing
You
the
were
chat.
watching the chat?
Yeah, I was watching the chat for sure. You know, that's the one thing that was missing from the TV experience. But you know, I had the second screen experience for that. But how did you watch it?
Man, I created like DEFCON 0. So I have my notepad out, I have our document. And with that, it wasn't really a lean back thing for me. I guess I didn't think to do it, via the television. So I had it on IG Live on my desktop, and then I had a second one going on my phone for the reasons you said. And even still, I have to say, and I was watching it through the Verzuz account, and I'm glad that they still do that just for folks that might not be, downloading Triller or anything like that. But I thought the production value visually was a new plateau as far as they go. I mean, the ring itself with the camera angles, and even though there was a gazillion people on stage, at no point could you not see who was rapping, and I thought there was a lot of value in that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, cool, man. So you ready to get into it?
Let's get to the shits, man.
All right. So round one, LOX, F with you from We Are the Streets versus Dipset's
F you. Yeah, I mean, they just came out swinging.
Yeah, F you. Yep.
Yeah.
Versus Dipset's I'm Ready from Diplomatic Immunity. I gave that one to Dipset. It was purely on the record. At that point, I wasn't really peeping the fact that the LOX were rapping with no tracks. It was just, I was just, seeing it as like a standard versus, checking the record versus the record. And I like that record more than the LOX record. So I gave that one to the to the Dipset. And I thought it was, at that point, I thought, okay, here we go. It's going to be a good match.
Nah, man. I mean, this time I saw what the LOX were doing, and I thought that this was like that last game in the preseason, the NFL. Like, oh no, we're tackling, and they came out with a message, and I made that translation because I'm Ready is the bigger record, I think, and unless you live in Yonkers, I think you're going to agree with me on that one. But the way the LOX delivered it with such conviction and fervor, it immediately sold it, and the fact that they went first with that declaration versus I'm ready kind of sends a message, but I always thought of that as more about the sample and kind of that chipmunk soul of the era. I went right into the LOX, and their performance is what pushed it over the edge.
And speaking of them going first in Yonkers, it already started off chippy from the very beginning. It was Cam was telling them that they had to go first because
Dipset not from Manhattan.
Team.
Yeah.
They're in Manhattan, and the LOX are not from Manhattan. They're not from home, so they had to go first. So I thought that was funny and a great way to kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give it up. When the tour announced this morning, I even pushed this versus a little bit more to the backseat of my mind. I knew I was going to be watching no matter what for this podcast. But I was like, these guys are already coming out with the promo related to this. I thought it would more be kind of like a celebration of an era or two different eras. And then I'll actually look back at these guys have been taking shots for 2 weeks at each other on Instagram, especially Styles and Jim Jones. And to start that way was really, really interesting. I really, I told you, like, I've interviewed, I think, everyone that rapped tonight. I'm not 100% sure of Jim Jones, but I've met Jim, and I think I've interviewed him over the years. Cam, there's two people that have kept me waiting a crazy amount of time. Large Professor, shout out to the God, and Cameron. Cameron once kept me and a camera crew waiting for hours upon hours upon hours at Atlantic Records. Cam, and I hear this story a lot, he's notoriously late. I'm not putting this on him, but I really wish this battle would have started promptly at 10 o'clock. I get it, you're not going to start at 9:30, but it was interesting when they came out to then like keep everyone waiting. I saw the comments going nuts, and then there was this whole jockeying for position. But right away, I think they grabbed everyone's attention with that matchup.
Well, if you looked at the chat, Swizz said around 10 o'clock or so, Cam is in the building. And so, escorted into the building is what he said. And so that indicated to me that, okay, that's where the holdup
That
was.
was the
But
holdup.
I had seen flyers up until yesterday saying that this was starting at 8 o'clock Eastern time.
Oh wow.
And then I tuned in at 8, and or actually, then today I saw 9. Then I tuned in at 9, and I saw 9:30 because they had a boxing match, and then they didn't actually start until 10:20. So definitely a late night, and there was some false alarms, which we'll get into a little bit later about like it shutting down. But for a while, it looked like it was going to be a really significant thing that it started so late because it seemed like they were going to shut it down after like 10 or 12 rounds, which would have been a real travesty because a lot of them had not played their haymakers. But all's well that ended well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so round 2. You want to tee that one up?
Yeah, the LOX did Band for TV, which was Jada and Styles P from Nori's self-titled album. Dipset came out with Crunk Music from their first group project, Diplomatic Community, in 2004. And for me, this one, I just noticed the stark difference. I mean, Dipset was rapping over vocal tracks, not incredibly well, in my opinion. And LOX came out really tight, really rehearsed, right? Putting on a show. So right away for me, it was 2-0 LOX.
Yeah, I had it. I had that one for the LOX too, so that brought it to 1-1 for me. Band from TV is just such a classic record. At this point, I'm still judging on the records. The Nori record is one that is timeless and really kind of introduced a whole new sound in New York. And it was the LOX joining forces with him, with Nori was, I think, a pretty big boost for him and his success because he was not as established at that point, and I think that them joining really helped to propel him. So that was a big record for me.
Classic New York record. I mean, I love Crunk Music. That's one of my, if I had to pick 10 Dipset joints, that's in there. And it was one of those that I didn't expect to hear right away, but delivery is everything to me. And I was actually surprised. I knew we would get Band for TV somewhere. I was surprised to get it that early. And the LOX, later in the night, they did some remixes, but they didn't do a ton of, I guess they did a few feature records, but that one was quick. And, but anyway, yeah, 2-0 start. And I'm going to let you do round 3. We're not gonna do Michael Shea and call it out.
Round 3. I'm still gonna shorten it. Ends Don't Start is something by LOX, or It's Dark and Hell is Hot from LOX, and then Dipset did Touch It or Not from Killa Season. That one, I give to the LOX also. That album, especially given the magnitude of where we are right now. Obviously, it's huge, and their relationship with X and collabos were always so significant, and that's just something that I think stands the test of time. So I gave it to the LOX on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I went LOX too. I sensed in the crowd, the Dipset joint, which was, a classic record. I remember hearing it on Hot 97 and Power when I was up in New York several times a week back then. But for the streaming audience, it was just not a great display. And the ad libs, Jewels was stepping over Cam's vocals and all of that. I had to go LOX with that one. And I didn't even necessarily in my mind factor in the DMX effect, but they put on a show, and we'll get more to that in a second.
So right now you got a 3-0 and I got a 2-1.
I got a 3-0. And for round 4, they went with the the military themed Mighty D Block 2 Guns Up. And Dipset went with Santana's Town, which was a breakout moment for Jewels. And really, I thought this was a major turning point, and I could see it cemented in the comments too. The LOX continued to put on a really high energy, tight, cohesive show. Like, they must have rehearsed. Again, that's one of the things that I'll be curious to know of, like, to what level they rehearsed. And there was great interplay, especially with them and the DJ. Was it Technician, the DJ?
Yep, DJ Technician. Yep.
I mean, just great interplay where, I mean, they clearly were on the same page. And yeah, I mean, for this, it was and that's a powerful Dipset record. That was a breakout moment, like I said, for Jewels. But all of a sudden, here we are, LOX are up 4-0, and they've won on a record that sounds great in the versus format, but maybe hasn't even aged well. And some of the Dipset guys were making fun of the record. Just I forget, you know, making fun of the military aspect of it and the call and response. But boom, here we are. And all of a sudden, I feel like you could even see it on the face of Cameron and Jewels of like, yo, what's going on here? Because this is not what I don't think they expected either.
Yeah, this is where it distinctly shifted for me. And, Cameron, to your point, actually called out Jadakiss for wearing the camo. He was like, yo, fam, this is not a war. We're going to war. We're in the
Yeah.
army here. What's going on? And this is when you realize the LOX actually did come to go to war. Jadakiss is calling out Cam and all the rest of Dipset for lip syncing now at this point. And this is when it becomes abundantly clear that LOX are performing on without any assisted vocals, and it's a full-blown concert, like you said. And then you saw, oh wow, the level that they are at right now is just different. This is not a standard versus. They're show ready. They're ready for the tour. This is what it is, and they brought full A game. So yeah, this was 3-1 for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, there was a lot of talking on the mic, I think probably to a detriment. I think that at some points it was really funny, some of the quips and remarks, and we'll talk about some of them. But I feel like Dipset's approach was kind of what Cameron did to Bill O'Reilly in that famous viral moment of like, I won't let you get a word in and I'm going to frustrate you that way. And that started to play out here. But when you're not putting on an A-level show, it's funny that that's not so funny. I mean, it's great for hip hop when it's against Bill O'Reilly, who is, kind of one of our culture's nemesis at the time. But this, it just started to seem annoying, and there was a lot of like, "Yo, can I speak? Can I talk?" But moving into round 5, I thought that truly this is definitely top 3 performances of the show, with "Who Shot You" and Jadakiss, going on Champ is Here 3, like really digging in the crates on this one. Pulled out the right record. Obviously, you're going to have the tremendous energy from one of the greatest beats of all time. And then Cameron comes with Get 'Em Girls and Into Live My Life, which is the kind of rehash of Ambitions as a Rider with Tupac. And he had Daz on that one. And while both of those records were noteworthy in their time, you can't compete with Jada on that. And Jada even says to the crowd during this point, I'm in war mode, and makes it clear. And let's not, Jada does have the advantage of having already been in a versus against Fabulous, but he came with a different energy this time, I thought. And boom, here we are, 5-0.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because Cameron actually rapped this time, at least over Get 'Em Girls. He came out, and I didn't know if that was and is what he was going to do initially, or if he felt kind of like he had to. His arm was twisted based on the chiding that Jada had given him for the last couple records, but he rapped on it, and I was like, okay, cool, here we go. They're gonna flip it to instrumentals, and it's gonna be an even battle. But then by the time Live My Life came on, it was back to lip syncing, or not lip syncing, but rapping over the record. And it was clear to me that, okay, LOX just came with a different level of preparation. And so it was 4-1 for me.
Yeah, and a respected journalist, somebody you and I both know, William Ketchum. I had posted about a show in Philly that Cameron's headlining in August, and I bought tickets to support some folks, and Ketchum was like, "Yo, Cameron's a great live performer," and I've heard that a lot, and you started to see that right around here. Like he definitely stepped it up, and I think realized that these records weren't going to win themselves on their own. And we're going to see that in round 6. You want to talk about the songs?
Yeah, so round 6, LOX came out with Reservoir Dogs. Sheik had been catching a little flack from them for not having been a major participant thus far, and this was his moment to kind of shine. Styles went a cappella on it, and then they followed up with Jadakiss's Blood Pressure, and that was going to be a theme that we saw recurring where, unlike most verses where you played like I think that the format was verse and then chorus and then pull up. These guys were playing full songs. They were doing multiple songs. Like there were no rules to it. And I'm curious as to what the agreed format was, because if there was one, it was disregarded. But then Dipset followed up with Cameron's 357, and then Just Fire, the Rock, and that joint, that's one of my favorite. So first of all, Just Blaze is one of my favorite producers, period. And that is one of my favorite tracks of his. I just think it's so underrated. Um, I go berserk. I think I sent it to you as song of the day probably like 3 times over the last year or so. So just pure record alone, that one took it from me, and Cam rapped on it too. And at the end, it was interesting because even Jadakiss, amidst all the shit talking, said, "Yo, that was a good one. That was the best one y'all did." So I thought him respecting that moment and giving it up, given that he was in war mode, showed just how strong it was. So I gave that one to Dipset, made it 4-2 for me, LOX.
Yeah, I mean, Jada also did something I think we'll see in battles sometimes where people know what the rhyme is going to be, or if they see somebody that's trying to say they're freestyling and they're not in a battle, you'll see the opponent kind of drop in as like a diss of like, I know how predictable your rhyming bars are going to be. Jada during Cam's verse on Just Fire was just dropping in the lyrics, and he did it in a way that sounded like respect to me, which was one of those cool cues as things were heating up, and as I feel like Dipset was a little bit lost in the lights of just showing the camaraderie there. And I thought that was really interesting. Two of my favorite Cameron records, period. I love Reservoir Dogs, but 357 was the joint that made me really appreciate Cam on his first album. And I agree with everything that you just said about, Just Fire, one of my favorite Just Blaze tracks. So Dipset comes on the board for me here, 5-1.
Okay, all right, cool. So next, LOX go to 24 Hours to Live, and Jada at this point, the talking is unbridled. He says we are crushing these dudes, and he does not use the word dudes.
Yeah.
This is also when you started to see a spike on Instagram Live. It was at 614K when I checked at this point. The total, the highest it got was, I think, 650, 654, something, 658, something like that. 658. And, which is really strong given, one, it's a weeknight, and I think that came in at around 11:30, midnight, something like that.
Plus the Olympics.
And it's summertime, and people are out and about on the West Coast. There's other sports going on, so I thought it was really impressive that they commanded those kind of numbers. I actually thought they might get higher, just given the fact that they were around the turn of the millennium, and I've noticed that a lot of the younger groups have gotten the bigger numbers. It's either the women or the younger groups, or artists, I should say. So, Jeezy and Gucci were north of 1 million, and those guys were both in the O's. Jill Scott and Erykah Badu were 750 or so. Monica and Brandy, I think, were the biggest, and they were, they're women, of course, from the 90s. So aside from women, it's typically artists who are in that O's period, but 618 is definitely nothing to sleep on. So, and then Dipset did G's Up, and then Byrd Gang Money. That one I gave to the LOX too. So for me, it was 5-2.
Yeah, I mean, Dipset did a medley. They did Purple City Byrd Gang too. I mean, several different songs. And I actually thought this was a low point for Dipset in the battle. And 24 Hours to Live, the LOX came with energy, a recognizable record. Two of those three records that Dipset did are not well known, and I can't imagine they're very well known beyond New York. And I just, I think, and I said it a minute ago, I think Dipset would have benefited from bringing more than just the core four on stage. Hell Rell was a spitter. J.R. Ryder was a spitter. And I think that there are joints in those catalogs that can really revive a crowd and recharge things. But yeah, I mean, what happened is what happened in 6-1 LOX.
And to your point, even Jada called him out on it. He said, "What song was that in New York? Was that new shit?" It was. I gotta say, he was going so hard that I was wondering at a certain point, is this planned or is this real? Because it seemed like dudes were getting a little tight, and You know, we talked about the art of slap boxing in our recent podcast, kind of detailing the ongoing war of words between Royce 5'9" and Lupe Fiasco, and now Mickey Faxon and many other people. But I likened it to slap boxing, and in slap boxing, you know, it's usually when that person gets hit in the ear that like it turns, it goes rogue, and you know, I felt like this is an ear slapping moment.
This was like my man Antonio Brown, celebrating in the when he hugged the goalpost like that at full speed. And it's funny too because, I mean, these are grown men, these are role models. Styles with his juice stores. Jada Kiss has really stepped up a lot from the years where he was beefing with so and so and whatnot. But it's fun to watch these guys still be able to talk smack. And it felt real, and it did. It felt like my eyes are glued because, Cameron, Jim Jones, Joel's, these are guys with big egos. And how are they going to react? And yeah, I thought it was super duper interesting, and it's great to see that that energy. So round 8, next up was one of my favorites because and in the Instagram comments, DJ Clue was one of the people in there. He was talking his own smack in there, which, Clue isn't new to. He told DJ Drama that he wouldn't even appreciate this night because this was the Clue era. And for those like myself, I wasn't living in New York, but I was buying a lot of those mixtapes. The LOX just ran the table with Clue, so they did the Next Level Freestyle, which is Show and AG's track that DJ Premier produced, the nighttime remix. And I did not expect to hear this. To me, that was that Easter egg moment of just like, oh, you guys took it there. And at this moment, when they're up by 6 points in my count, to do this was just a referee would have thrown a penalty for celebrating the play. And there was a whole bunch of bars in there. We'll let you talk about them in a second, but Dipset came with their own special joint, Bout It 2, which was a touchstone moment. I was in New York a lot at the time. They took the Master P True record and redid it. And that was so cool because Dipset just had so much swagger. But I feel like, that was a down south appropriation. Dipset kind of took that moment and made it theirs. And if you were already following them, you were in on it. It was kind of a cool, swag thing. The LOX just came with bars and rhymes, beats and rhymes. And that's going to win for me every time. So they were 7-1.
Yeah, man, this is where it started to feel like it could get away from Dipset, and it might just be a total blowout. And I think Jada sensed the moment too. He was again just coming with all the smoke. He said, we're doing real hip hop. We're doing real hip hop, and this is the mecca of hip hop. And these dudes is lip syncing, literally. And he said, "You're gonna do a rap, or you're gonna keep playing Paula Abdul." I mean, he was going hard, and I made a note, and I said, Dipset better get in the gym before this concert. It's time to lift some bars, because LOX they're in full playoff mode already. Like the season hasn't even started, and they're in full playoff mode. So, and to your point, that DJ Premier record, that track is just. That one is undefeated to me too, so it was hard to begin with, but with them rapping over it too, and it's a deep cut, crazy. So yeah, I had a 6-2 LOX at that point.
And I love what this does for verses because, I mean, I'll be real. There's been some verses that I have not watched. I did not watch Bow Wow versus Soulja Boy. Respect. I had some friends that were glued to their, screens, but and maybe that one was great. But I love that this sets a precedent that you're not just going to come in and rely on the record. You got to deliver the record. And I love even the trash talk of reminding people that. So, round 9, LOX came in with Dope Money from the first Rough Ryders compilation in 9-9. And then there was a weird kind of snafu between their record and Dipset. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there was a point where Cam came over to Jadakiss and actually leaned in his ear and was talking to him. And, that's another time when I was thinking, okay, regardless of what they said, something that's transpired where it's gotten to be too much. and and Cam is telling Jada to take the temperature down a little bit. You could see, he whispered in his ear. You could see Jada kind of like nodding and like, covering the mic, and brought the energy down somewhat. At this point, there were more people on the stage too. So even if it wasn't that there were, feelings being caught on the side of the artist, without the crew being fully clued into what was going on, you could see something jumping off, and it wouldn't be unheard of, especially with that many people, that much energy. We saw how crazy things got with the NBA once, fans got allowed back in. That energy gets turned up to a different degree, post COVID. And so, I think they decided to kind of pull back a little bit. But what was your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have heard it, but I also respect the privacy. I thought too, I mean, you and I as friends that razz on each other, there's been a couple times where I feel like each of us has been like, yo, that one, like, come on, man. Like, and I felt like that was what Cam was telling Jada. But it also made me wonder too if it was about airtime. If, they were doing, it seemed like the LOX were doing a lot of full songs. Dipset was coming in and doing like, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. I didn't know if it was a time issue. But in any of, go ahead.
To your point, at one point, Jadakiss said that, they only had 25 minutes left.
Yeah.
And so, and this is only round 9. So if you can imagine them trying to squeeze in 22 more songs, and probably more than that, given the pace they were going per round within 25 minutes was not going to happen.
Yeah. And, there was, I felt for Cam because after this kind of break in the action, he came back with one of his bigger records. Again, to your point, Just Blaze, peak Rockefeller era, Welcome to New York City, Cam's collaboration with Jay-Z. And, I kind of threw Cam some bail on this one. First of all, I think it's a better record. Second of all, even though it might not have been with the precision of some of the deliveries that I saw from Jada Styles, and she absolutely played his part, Cam stepped it up. He was shifting into gear. So, I gave him the point. I gave Dipset the point. And it's 7-2 for me at this juncture.
Yeah, I gave this one to Dipset too, and so it brought it to 6-3 for me. Great record. Still, lots are outperforming them, but I thought this was a better record and enough to give them the point. So round 10, and this is where you started to think, okay, cool, like the energy is crazy, and maybe there's bad blood here, but this one to me is where it started clicking in that, okay, this is, to your point in the very beginning, WWE. Because, Cam comes with Welcome to New York City, and then the LOX come right back with New York. And, it was, Ja Rule, and it was, and then they did Locked Up, but it was just such a seamless follow-up that you thought, okay, this has got to be coordinated, not just in terms of activity, but the set list too.
It's a mutual DJ, know. Yeah, I thought that as well. And it reminded me, but then even before we get to the Dipset, I mean, it's interesting too, because, Jada does his verse from New York, Styles does his verse from the Akon track. Both perform it really well. The crowd is very involved. And then they do this weird thing where, Styles shouts out Max B and reminds people that he was with Max a lot before he went in. And, Cam had just had this conversation in Jada's ear. And I don't know the particulars of Max B versus Dipset, but I know that there's politics there that also involve French Montana that, and it seemed very calculated in the way the New York crowd was reacting. I was like, this is interesting. And right away, Dipset responds, and Styles also does this thing, and he shouted out 2 of the individuals that are behind bars due to Tekashi 6ix9ine. So you're starting to involve some New York streets here too. I just thought that was really interesting. And it was, I guess, sort of kind of tongue in cheek. But then Dipset responds with Certified Gangsters, which kind of speaks to your WWF point of like, the message of that song was peak New York, street gang, kind of tracing it and saying like New York has its own sets too. And that was part of the whole Diplomats vibe in the day. But they go right into that. And it seems like Jim in particular really wants to make it clear that he's got, like, they're both jockeying in these shout outs. And for me, as calculated as this seems at one point, given the people on stage, the people in the crowd, I'm like, is this going to escalate at this point over something that has very little to do with hip hop? But luckily that didn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. So I gave that one to LOX again. So now we're 7-3 for me. I think you had 8-2.
8-2 Warlock. So round 11, the only verse that I cannot confirm, and it might be a freestyle, was this LOX song. And they did it over, you know, the Love Unlimited track that Nas used for No Ideas original. And, you know, that's the beautiful thing of verses, is it moves so quickly. Definitely somebody in the comments, let me know. And certainly there'll be formal scorecards. That went against a big record, you know, Jim Jones, We Fly High, aka Ballin. So how did you score this one?
Yeah, I already told you my story about We Fly High. Man, that record ran the radio and the clubs for a good 3 months or so. It was like a New York anthem. And so this one is undefeated for me. So I gave this to Dipset, you know, 7-4.
I see you took a shot at me, man, in my notes.
Yeah.
So, you know, Jim does this thing that made me laugh is, you know, the record starting with the intro, and he lets somebody in the crowd put some chains on him, and I laugh because Styles P goes, "Yo, that is so corny, man." And it was one of the highlights. You know, before the battle even started, I think Cam told Jadakiss, "Don't ever shake my hand like that again." Like these little like clever lines, the internet may have fun with over the next few days, but that made me laugh because it is a classic record. I adore it. I remember where I was the first time I heard it, and I say adore it. You don't like that word in terms of a record. But I thought that Jim relied on the crowd. He just stood basically still and presented it. And meanwhile, you know, Jada makes the point, some of our mixtapes are better than their real records, which leads me to believe that is a mixtape joint. I know it might be sacrilege in the eyes of some. I'm going LOX on this one. You know, Jim Jones got a fastball across the plate, and he did knock it out of the park, because that's one of those records you have to use as an ace up your sleeve to get a point on the board, and he just didn't do that. And I feel like the pageantry of putting on the chain, really, he could have done way more cooler shit to just certify the record. But that's just my take.
Yeah, I mean, the energy on the stage was contagious at this point, and definitely spread to you and me behind the scenes in our document. Because when you said, you know, I adore that record, but not, I said, please never use the word adore in connection with a rap record again. So I think that says it all.
Yeah, I mean, at one point when you're throwing Dipset these records, I tease you because I know often you'll tap Harlem for free parking, and I was like, yeah, man, you're just doing that because you need to walk through those streets to get, you know. But
that's what helps me keep balling.
Word. So round 12.
12. Yeah, round 12. And this was interesting to me because, you know, we said that they had gotten kind of that 25-minute warning just a minute or so ago. And the LOX responded by playing All About the Benjamins. And to me, that was them signaling, okay, this battle's about to be over. I think they'd even been told they only had 3 songs left. And so they pulled out the big guns. And I thought, okay, you know, it's a wrap, because what record is bigger than All About the Benjamins for them? Even though it's not their record, it's just such a timeless, you know, classic from
breakout moment too.
Yeah, a breakout moment for them. You know, arguably launched their career. You know, one of their, you know, few records with Biggie. Like I just I didn't see that as anything as topping that. So I thought, okay, cool, we're winding down. And then Dipset responded with Dipset Anthem. Great record too, but you know, All About the Benjamins, I can't think of a single record on here that would beat that. So I gave that to LOX. So at this point, I'm with LOX at 8-4 now.
Yeah, I went with LOX to 10-2. It's a touchstone. You know, how I remember, you know, late 97, early 98 is that record. It was definitely the MTV awakening of the LOX. And for me, I was in Pittsburgh. So at that point, I'm not privy to mixtapes like that. It was interesting too in the chat, Diddy said that Jadakiss wrote his verse, which shouldn't come as any surprise, but it was even cool when you talk about engagement, just like that sort of factoid. But yeah, this one was without question. So for 13, again, to that point of like, we only have a few songs left, it kind of felt like the victory lap, and the LOX did Wild Out, which is a record that I gotta say in its day, 21 years ago, I didn't love. I just thought it was chasing choruses a lot, but it really worked well in this scenario. And Dipset responded with probably my favorite Cameron solo record of Killa Cam from Purple Haze. And although I love that record and I play it, I would say on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, it doesn't work in the versus format like that. And while Cam's performance definitely improved throughout this versus, I think he thought it was going to be this real aha moment with the crowd. And I feel like the crowd was already won by the LOX, and they were just kind of just riding it out. So for me, the LOX go up a whole other point to 11-2, which is, of all of the verses we've seen that I've scored, that's probably the biggest gap that I've seen to date. But how did you score it?
Yeah, so Wild Out is an anthem and a distinctive New York record, and really speaks to Swizz Beatz' sound that he kind of controlled at that time.
Yeah.
I actually never really liked the record that much because it seemed too derivative of Jigga for me. Jigga, so. And I got a thing with records that sound too close to other hit records that just came out. And so, but given how big it was for the moment, I still gave it to LOX because I thought it was just a bigger record for the time, and I thought that it had more longevity. So
Yeah.
I got LOX 9-4 at this point.
So round 14, I always defend Sheik, man. I think that Sheik gets a really bad rap sometimes, and Dipset definitely preyed on that, and the LOX responded, kind of pointing out Freaky Zeke. But Sheik, and you and I interviewed the LOX last year. He's always the most engaged person of the group, in a group setting. I think he has phenomenal records. He did one in the final rounds that we'll talk about, but they kind of handed him the ball for the Kiss Your Ass Goodbye remix. And I like that. And Dipset responded. I thought that they would respond with the Freaky Zeke moment. And there were a lot of people in the comments of the chat, and they may have had camera angles on Triller or something I didn't see, about Zeke was just killing it on the hype man level. But they responded with the Salute remix from Jim Jones and then 848. Two records that I have to admit were not top of mind to me. And I thought that the LOX had sent a message with Kiss Your Ass Goodbye, like even that, kind of like when they came out with FU. And it went to 12-2 for me. I definitively at that.
Yeah, at this point, Jada is still popping off, and he says about Freaky Zeke, he's the fat dude in Drew Hill. I mean, the clowning was amazing, but I still gave this one to Dipset. I just thought the record was better, and the records were better, and so I had it at 9-5 at this point. So still striking distance, but LOX are comfortably in the lead for me.
Cool. You want to take round 15?
Yeah, round 15. LOX lead off with Felony, and then after a pause, there's another kind of like false alarm here that kind of threw out the LOX. I think the LOX are now, because of that false alarm, kind of out of their rhythm. And I thought that record was, especially for a round 15 record, not a very strong showing. Maybe if you want to pull it out in the earlier rounds or something like that. And then Dipset pulls out Oh Boy and Hey Ma. And I'm like, they might have more in the chamber. LOX, got thrown off, and Dipset's about to like pull back in and maybe come in for the upset win. It felt like the NBA playoffs this year, where a lot of teams blew 25-point leads in the third quarter. I thought that might be going on. But it's also a time when it really got real on stage, and that's when Styles said, we agreed we were going to get chippy, a little chippy before we got here. This is all love. And he said, we're not going to F this money up. Don't scare the white people. And then he said, both sides of entourage get out the stage. It's all love. And then Styles and Jim embraced at Jadakiss' behest. So, at this point, like on stage, it was getting real, man. And it might have even been getting real for the artists based on how their crews were reacting. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was cool that they said that explicitly. They didn't let it get out of control. They let the energy stay that way, but they wanted everyone to know that it was all love between the groups and cool.
Yeah, I like that. I thought that was mad responsible. And then of course, Dipset after this moment, they respond with two of the bigger records, ones that we knew we'd see tonight, both Cameron records of Oh Boy and Hey Ma. Crew records, but yeah, and I don't know for you, do you want to say how you scored it?
Yeah, I scored it for Dipset. So
Yeah.
for me, it's 9-6 at this point.
Which is, like you said, striking distance, and even though at this point we're in the mindset of there's only a few records left, that's still a close, if you're watching baseball, that's still a close game. For me, I feel that Dipset had a challenge. They did great records, performing. These are records they probably performed the most. And the crowd was figuring itself out. The stage was a little different. I definitely threw them the bone. And I agree too. I think that, Felony Brothers wasn't the greatest choice. The record wins, the effort was there, and some of it might have been lost in translation with the crowd, given the intermission or kind of brief pause. I gave it to Dipset as well. So it's 12-3 for me in favor of the LOX.
Cool. So you want to kick up the next
one? Round 16 turned into like a mega medley. And what's funny is, especially coming after, Oh Boy and Hey Ma, I think it was Jewel's, it might have been Jim that was teasing the LOX that they had no girl records, that, basically there was some chiding that like, you really only make records for dudes, which I thought was just some clever trash talk. Again, I mean, if this wasn't choreographed, shout out to who's ever working with the DJ or however this happened. If it was, they certainly sold us on the drama. The LOX responded with a crazy medley, including Ride or Die Chick with, Eve. They had it's Honey by Mariah Carey, right? The remix.
Yep, Mariah Carey. Yeah.
The J-Lo remix, the Mary J. Blige No More Drama remix, and then my personal favorite Chic Luch record, and one of my favorite just love records in hip hop, Good Love. And then like they're just commanding. It kind of reminded me of like a vintage dance hall battle, because they're like, we got the mic, we got the PA system, take it back. And they went into Knock Yourself Out, the Jada record. And yeah, I just thought that was super interesting. And Dipset responds with Summer with Mami, the Jim Jones record. And Jim is not, he's missing lyrics and kind of taking spots in the record. The LOX had it major way for me, 13-3.
Yeah, back to the WWE analogy, there's always that moment where the good guy is getting beaten and like down on his feet, and he has several 2 counts, but kicks out last minute, staggering. Then all of a sudden it comes back and like starts punching and like does the flying like drop kick, and it's a wrap. And this was that moment for me, because just when they seemed down and out, seemed like they were staggering, they hadn't paced themselves well, they pull out like 4 or 5 just bangers. And Jada's saying, these dudes don't know what Grammys look like. He said, we got Grammys. These dudes don't know what Grammys look like. They don't know what they look like. Are you kidding me? Like,
they know what he said. They know what grams look like.
Right. Yeah, it's incredible. And so after that medley of just gigantic hits, like I had to give it to LOX. So I had it at 10-6 at that point.
Round 17, and at this point you can kind of feel like at any moment that it's going to end. But I mean, especially on the LOX part. And let's be real. I mean, a lot of verses have flipped the order. The LOX had, were first up through the entire verses, which I thought was interesting and probably played to their advantage. Especially it showcased their hunger to just keep it going. But for round 17, they did Styles P, Good Times, I Get High, and they did a remix with the Jada verse, and they flipped it to I Got Five on It, the instrumental, which was, again, innovative, creative, more than just the record as you hear it. And Dipset responded with Santana, and it was LOX for me all the way. So at this point, they're 14-3.
Yeah, man. I don't have a ton more to add to this one. I gave it to LOX too. Another great record, and so I got it at 11-6 at this point.
Yeah, and round 18 is like that. I mean, things are ending, and it feels like they got the green light to go to about midnight. But the LOX do another just kind of medley. All for the Love, Rough Riders Anthem remix, Get At Me Dog, which Chic kind of had the call and response on the chorus. Biggie's Last Day record, and then Dipset does Cameron's Kanye record, Down. And at that point, I gotta say too, you and I talk a lot about fitness and kind of physical preparation for this. Cam seems tired and fatigued at this point, and even us as viewers, I'm sitting at home, and I'm like, okay, but the LOX got it, 15-3.
Yeah, even I think Styles P, or I think it was Styles, said, "Yeah, I'm trying to go home. Like, it's late." But at this point, they're doing Biggie records and DMX records. I mean, how are you going to answer, and back to back in the same round? How are you going to answer that? Like, so this is where you start to see just the muscle of their overall catalog going to work. And so, yeah, I gave it LOX to 12-6 for me.
So the final round, 19, another medley, Money, Power, Respect, which I gotta say, like, I was not a huge fan of that record at the time. It sounded absolutely great tonight. That's one that I've appreciated more and more with time. The By Your Side Jadakiss record, Come Through from one of the Violator joints, which another just kind of a deep grab. Put Your Hands Up, Blackout, and of course, We Gonna Make It. And Dips came back with I really mean it. And at one point, I'm curious of your take. Cam did like an acapella thing, and he kept repeating the same couplet. I think he did it 3 or 4 times. I couldn't tell.
Like it, Get Your Gun, yeah.
And very clearly, this had turned into a hip hop moment. At one point, Cameron earlier in the battle had dissed the LOX and says like, "Yo, this ain't SOBs, man." which is a funny diss to me. I mean, anyone that's been to SOBs in New York. But at that same time, like when hip hop as an idea and as a spirit has prevailed, to be coming out with a cappella gun talk is not probably reading the room very well. And at one point, it seemed like he was getting booed. And, one of the things that I've neglected to talk about so far is we are on the 26th anniversary of the 95 Source Awards in the same building, Madison Square Garden. And I seem to care about this. I think you thought I was being corny, but if you paid attention, that same like light, those grids up above the audience were exactly the same. And let's not forget, Snoop and Dre and Death Row and Suge all got booed. It was an upset day for them. Bad Boy came and prevailed. Was Cameron getting booed? First of all, was he getting booed, and is there any significance to that?
I did not hear him getting booed, so I can't confirm or deny that. I did think that the Get Your Gun line was like definitely misplaced, given the levels that were going on and the energy in the air. And at one point, I think it was around now, or actually it was right after it was all over, Styles P explicitly said, "We all came here safe. We're all gonna get home safe." Everybody in here, it's not gonna be any fighting, no anything. We're all gonna get home safe. And so he read the room and wanted to make sure that people were cool leaving. It's a lot of dudes, a lot of energy that they rile people up, and they wanted to make sure that people left with the right mindset. So I thought that was dope. But at this point, in round 19, the final round, they're doing 6 songs to 1. I mean, so like it's just it's not even a fair fight at this point, you know. So I can understand why there might be some frustration on the part of Dipset, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I gave it to LOX on that 13-6. So my final tally was LOX 13-6. I
I
thought
was
it was a
16-3.
clear 16-3.
Yeah.
I thought it was a clear and decisive win for LOX. You know, let me ask you this: would your score have changed if Dipset had performed in the same way that LOX did?
I think there's some records that they absolutely could have gotten away with. I think they have hits. I really think, you know, Cameron carried Dips, and I think it took a minute for Cameron to warm up. I think Jim has tremendous presence. I'm gonna shoot Jim some bail. I think on wax, Jim is 5 times the MC he was even when he made We Fly High. His projects with Harry Fraud and, you know, El Capo, all the different stuff he's made with Empire over recent years is really good music, in my opinion. It's stuff that I listen to, but I don't think that translated to the stage. And I think Joel's and Freaky Zeke were weak links tonight. I don't think that they carried their weight. Sheik had a few moments, and I think that Styles P is a far superior lyricist to Jim Jones, and that showed itself, you know, especially as a performing MC, and that showed itself tonight. Jada and Styles, with, you know, some help from Sheik, just ran the table by and large, and I think that that was a seismic win, you know.
Yeah. Well, so that's it, man. I think. Would you want to go to this show after this? Did this make you hype for the show?
You know, if I feel like they can make it fun, you know, like G-Rap and Kane have done, you know, song for song interplay during shows over the years. I don't know, and I think it could be a liability when you get certain crowds to do this on tour, but I think some of this chippy energy could make for a very good show. If not for COVID, I would have loved to have been in that building. But I hope it awakens showgoers. My question to you with that is, and I'd love your answer to that too, is after tonight, should this be like an all-star game? Should Dipset, you know, should it be state property, then Dipset, and then LOX as the headliner? Did they earn that right?
All right. So I'll answer my question first. I'm interested to see whether or not they do a traditional format where it is like one act, second act, third act, or if they go back to back and take the stage together. I think if they do that, then it sidesteps your question
Yeah.
because they're both on stage together. They can have the energy, you know, they can cheer each other on now that the verse is out, you know, out of the way, the competition's out of the way. I think though they'll probably do it traditional, and yes, I think LOX are the ones who finish it just because they've been around longer. I think they do have a longer catalog. I just think that's the right order. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I like that, and honestly, I may have seen pop-up appearances from some of these, but I've never gone to a show from either group headlining. And I gotta say, like, I'm so impressed with the LOX's performance, and I don't think that that's something that would, you know, change night to night. I'm sure the crowd energy in New York is always going to be, you know, crazy home field advantage, but I'm really, really impressed. And, you know, Cam and Jim and Joel's, you know, while I've offered some criticism tonight, these are showmen, Freaky Zeke too. So I think it's a really cool show. Their tour, as of right now, there's no dates in Philly, but I would love for both of these groups, as well as, you know, state property, to, you know, get their flowers. And provided we're in a safe space, I want hip hop tours to be fun again and talked about, and revive some important acts. And, you know, that's 3 of them right there.
Yeah, seeing this definitely made me more interested in attending a concert. You know, just a reminder of how many great hits both groups have, and a really not even a reminder, just like a wake up call as to how strong the LOX can be as performers. You know, and so, like I said, I hope Dipset gets in the gym,
Yeah, man.
gets those bars up, and so this is going to be an incredible concert.
Well, man, as I let you go, you got a song of the week?
I do. My song of the week is "I Say a Little Prayer" by Aretha Franklin. She is a lifelong favorite of mine, and I went to the African American Music Museum in Nashville this weekend. Fantastic experience, recommended for anyone who likes music and gets the opportunity to go to Nashville. But it played a prominent role in one of the exhibits, and so I've had it in my head ever since.
That song did?
Yeah. So that song's been in my head. But what about you?
Man, that's dope. I love the whole like Muscle Shoals sound, and actually, you know, my streaming platform of choice, I won't mention it, just told me that Aretha is one of my top 3 artists this month that I've listened to. Mine, in the spirit of competition, I sent it to you today. It's a joint called Clubber Lang. Shout out to Mr. T by Josh One, who, you know, worked with King Britt and a bunch of other people over the years. He's kind of like a down tempo, but a hip hop producer, and it's got Demetrius Rhymes on it, which, you know, underground hip hop fans may know as AD out of Chicago. So I played it 5 times today. I've been enjoying that one, and especially the way this versus went, it fits.
Yeah, dope. Well, we got another one coming up very soon. We got 2 big albums coming out. In theory, we have Kanye West's Donda finally, but with more certainty and probably maybe even more expectations and anticipation for our audience. Nas has just announced King's Disease 2. He's got a track with Eminem for the first time ever, and it also features a PMD. Another track with Lauren, YG, A Boogie with the Hoodie,
Uncle Charlie Wilson.
Charlie Wilson. Pretty interesting lineup. So I think that's gonna be dope.
Yeah, man, exciting times ahead. But this was fun to do. Shout out to the hip hop and shout out to Versus, man. You guys, they won me back, you know, in a big way. So
word, for real. All right, man.
All right, man. So we do it again.
Yeah, peace.